Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We are almost through our seminar today, but next we will hear from Dr. Kelly Casey. She has been practicing OT for 15 years at Johns Hopkins Hospital. She serves on the leadership team in acute care on neurology and neurosurgery. She also is a lead OT in the ALS clinic and the director of the Assisted Technology Clinic. Dr. Casey is AOTA board certified in physical rehabilitation and also certified assistive technology practitioner. Dr. Casey is the director at the Johns Hopkins OT Acute Care Fellowship. So Dr. Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you and talk about adaptive equipment and recommendations.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Let me share my screen. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out on the West Coast. I'm out here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm at Johns Hopkins Hospital. I've been practicing, as Nicole said, for 15 years. I'm predominantly in the ALS clinic, but I also split my time between all of the different neurodiagnoses in acute care and ICU. So I do a little bit of all neuro all day, every day, from the ICU all the way through to outpatient. Some of the evidence that I'll present is about ALS and ALS specific, but a lot of it is translatable to anyone going through any neuromuscular disorder or disease. Just a disclaimer, I'm going to share a lot of resources over the 15 years that I've been in the clinic and worked with neuro patients. I've really found some things that have been awesome strategies that patients have taught me. And so I'm hoping that I can provide some information, but I do not endorse any of these devices or products, and unfortunately don't make any money off of them. But I just wanted to let you know, I feel like it's important to share information when we have it. So what is occupational therapy? A lot of people are familiar with physical therapy, but OT is a little bit less known. We're licensed professionals, and our focus is to keep you engaged in activities that are important to you. And that could mean anything. And this is just a brief list of some of the different ways that your OT could help maybe modify or come up with some strategies. Essentially, what I like to tell my patients is that if there's ever anything that's getting frustrating, difficult, aggravating, and you're like, there has got to be an easier way to do this, before giving up on the activity altogether, whether it's golf, sexuality, taking a shower, taking care of your children, driving, it might be worth touching base with your OT to see if there's any adaptive strategies or equipment that just might make things a little bit easier. A lot of it's problem solving together. It's asking questions and then bouncing things back and forth. I have clients who I see all over the country and international who will say, is there any easier way to put your shoes on? Or I'm having a hard time with my children's clothing. My hands are just getting a little bit weaker. Is there a way that I could do this that's a little bit easier and less frustrating? I'm having a hard time getting in and out of the car. Anything from modifying someone's ability to get on a boat and do those kinds of extracurricular activities. It really is what's important. And sometimes I'll tell clients too that if you start a conversation and your OT starts going down a road, or any medical professional, and it's something that you say, that's really cute, but I am never going to use that, don't spend your money on it and don't waste your time on it. Maybe move on to something else. If putting on your socks is not that important to you because somebody's going to help you with it, great, then let's focus your session on the other things that you're having a hard time with. I included a little bit of evidence. I'm kind of a nerd in this respect that I definitely want to make sure I'm practicing the most evidence-based practice. At the end of your presentation, I've included at least 5 or 6 slides of nothing but references. I do a lot of talks similar to this across the country for a variety of different audiences, whether it's patients, families, professionals. But I just wanted to make sure that some of the evidence is there. Some people like to say, well, what makes you say that we should be doing this in a certain way? So this is just one systematic review that was specific to ALS, but again, it's very translatable, that attendance at a multidisciplinary clinic can increase the quality of life and extend the survival of patients with ALS. The extension that was viewed in this study was 6 months of extended survival for ALS. And OT's specific role was having the unique skill to continually modify and adapt to the changing needs. It's definitely not one size fits all for any patient. And it's not one size fits all at any time. Things are changing. Sometimes patients are doing better, sometimes they're doing worse. Sometimes they just want to know what information is available, and being able to adapt and make those recommendations is what OT really prides ourselves on. This was a study examining PT and OT's role, and I know that you're going to benefit from hearing from an awesome PT a little bit later today. And that it really looked at what was our role within the ALS population and looking at assistive devices. Some of the evidence that we've seen lately is a lot of times therapists will recommend a bunch of equipment and devices, and then the patients get home and they're like, I'm never using this. Or this worked in the clinic, but it doesn't work in my home. And so that's why I think just keeping an open dialogue and talking through it and thinking, would this really be something that's beneficial in the long term? Or is this something that, you know what, we shouldn't waste your money on that. Let's look at doing it a different way. Splinting and bracing, I'm going to show you a couple of slides of some different braces and splints that I found beneficial for some of my patients. Subluxation slings, those are for shoulder. So if there's like a dislocation in the shoulder, so the humerus kind of just drops out and dislocates a little bit, sometimes from weakness in the deltoid, we can see that. And so occasionally there's a sling that would be more supportive. If neck weakness is an issue, my number one over 15 years recommendation for a cervical collar is the Headmaster. Now, this is not for your cervical spine surgeries, but definitely for the muscular weakness of the extensors of the neck. The Headmaster collar fits underneath the jawline. It's open and airy through the neck and then just distributes the weight down across the chest. And it's a little bit less obvious that you're wearing a cervical collar. I've had patients have a lot of success with that collar. Whether it's wheelchairs, mobility, adaptive strategies for driving, also dealing with the psychosocial issues. Sometimes there's cognitive decline or memory changes that you might experience. And also the caregiver burden and being able to help caregivers and find easier and safer ways for them to maintain their health while they're helping to take care of their loved ones. So I'm going to show you, I wanted to spend most of the time today talking about a lot of adaptive equipment strategies. I'm going to show you a lot of pictures just to be able to give life to some of the different descriptions of what's available. But again, as you're seeing these slides, kind of think about what would be beneficial for you or your loved one or anybody that you might know. We're going to start off with feeding. Something that I love to do is eat. So here you can see on the left, you can see there are scoop plates. So this is a plate that has a curve on one side of it. And what that does is when you scoop your fork or your spoon into the plate, you don't have to lift your arm to catch all the food before it falls off the side of your plate. It's kind of like a catch-all, so nothing can fall off the side of the plate. Seems really simple, but it's been very, very beneficial for a lot of our clients. On the right, you can see built-up foam tubing. They come in about a 12-inch strip, and you can cut it however long you need it. You can also cut it lengthwise to be able to pop it on or pop it off of your utensils, your writing utensils, your feeding utensils, your toothbrush, anything that's thin that you might need to be able to pick up that's a little bit harder to hold on to. Excuse me. A universal cuff. This is awesome because if the finger muscles ever get so weak that even just squeezing a little bit is tough, this will strap it onto your hand, and that you don't even need to be able to move your fingers at all to still be able to hold on to your spoon or your fork or your toothbrush. So if you have the ability to bend your elbow up to you and get your hand to your mouth, but you don't have that grip strength to hold on to it, this is a great strategy. It's got a D-ring on the bottom that's a little plastic hook that you can use to hook on or off to be able to get it on and off yourself. Brushing your teeth. And here you can see the universal cuff and the scoop plate being used together. Don't ask me why I'm eating a tomato on a plate. This is a nice series of adaptive gross grasp cutlery. I like the knife that's in her hand right there. It allows you to be able to hold it with a big gross grasp instead of having to squeeze it with your fingers. A lot of these different devices have been mass marketed. You'll see them in the as seen on TV sections, and they're really, really beneficial if there's any kind of hand weakness. So things like opening jars, opening cans. This is one that was at Walmart for $19. And again, I don't endorse any stores or make any money off of these products, but it's pretty nice. You put it on the top of your jar, you push the button, and it pops open the lid. Again, if somebody else is going to be able to do that, that's fine. But if you're on your own or if there's a time that you need to do it and you need some help, this might be helpful. There's a variety of different cups that are a little bit easier to hold on to. Oftentimes people will see a plastic handle and think they have to squeeze it with their hand. And instead, I recommend sliding your hand in around the cup and letting the handle hook onto your hand. That way, then you don't have to squeeze it with the little tiny muscles of your fingers. The cup on the left is an adaptive cup from a medical supply company, and the ones on the right were 99 cents, again, at a big box store. So it doesn't always mean that you've got to buy the quote unquote adaptive medical grade. Often you can find these things available a lot less expensive. I will preface that most of the equipment that we're talking about is not covered by insurance, unfortunately. When we do get to a few things that are, I'll mention those. This is just another display of some adaptive feeding. The blue mat that's underneath is called Dysum. If you think of contact paper that you might put in your kitchen cabinets that just keeps things from gripping, or it grips things a little bit so it keeps them from sliding, sometimes if there's bigger movements or any tremors or anything like that, the plate could go moving, and it's nice just to be able to hold things down. I also use that Dysum for clients underneath their bottoms if they find that they're sliding out of their chairs a lot, like their hips are sliding forward, and they just need a little grip to be able to keep from sliding forward. That's something that I'll use there too. You can see that there are some different utensils with big handles that are in this picture. They're great. There's a lot of companies that provide those. Again, you can do that, or you could do the built-up foam with your own utensils at home. An over-the-lap bed and breakfast kind of a tray is helpful if the weakness is in the upper part of the arm. So if the elbow flexors, your biceps, if it's hard to bring your hand up to your mouth and your shoulder's weak and your elbow's weak, but if you were able to prop it up on something and eat, it just might make it a little bit easier. Something else that works just the same is stacking up some books or a box. That might bring it up just a little bit more too, to get it a little bit easier to prop your elbows. I always say, you know, your mom always told you to get your elbows off the table, and I'm telling you to put your elbows back on the table. It just gives you a little bit more support whenever you're feeding or brushing your teeth or shaving. If you notice while you're shaving or doing your hair, your arms are getting weaker and weaker and more harder to hold up, propping them up on something is going to be really helpful. This is much more advanced. So I've got some low-tech options in here and some high-tech options. This is the OBI powered feeding device. This is a wonderful device. It's one of the first that we've seen that's actually been something that's actually usable for clients. The unfortunate thing is that it's pretty expensive. It's around $6,000 right now. There is a renting option for some of these. I've been able in my 15 years to get 2 devices ever covered by insurance for clients. And I've probably tried about 30 times. So just to know that it might be an uphill battle with insurance companies. But this is a device that someone still has to prepare the food and place it into the different slots, and then the plate will rotate and it will scoop and bring the bite to the client. This was a great resource from the Motor Neuron Disease Association. I saw this in Boston at the International ALS Conference a few years ago. And it really is a nice recipe book for anyone who's got dietary modifications. So if they need pureed diet, anything that's difficulty with swallowing or dysphagia. It's really nice because it offers some great recipes that actually make food taste better when it's in that different format, and other strategies that might sound really simple, like how to pipe it out on the plate, that it doesn't just look like a bowl of mush, but you're actually piping it out into the shape of the food. It sounds silly, but when you look through the cookbook and you think, that actually doesn't look so bad. If I needed to modify my diet, that looks much more appealing. And then different tips and tricks for seasoning modified diets as well. So I always like to include this if you've got to go down that road and you're talking with your speech pathologist and your physicians about dietary changes, it's just a nice option to be able to find some alternatives. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about dressing. One of the easiest and cheapest modifications for dressing is adding key rings to everything. Your zippers on your book bags, your purses, your coats, your pants. The nice thing about the pants is typically the flap of cloth in front of the zipper is going to cover it up so no one's going to see it anyway. That way then you don't have to pinch to be able to pull the zipper up. You can just hook the key ring. This is something I recommend getting in bulk and putting it on everything. I have 2 little kids, and this is one of the easiest ways for us to have them be a little bit more independent. But you put them on and then you leave them on. You throw them in the washer. It's no different from the material of the zipper. The nice thing is that for years we talked about adaptive clothing, and there were some manufacturers that were trying to do adaptive clothing. The tough part was it wasn't as fashionable. And I have clients who often would be like, I just wish I want to wear the clothes I want to wear and look cute. And I have a hard time getting it zippered, or I can't get my pants on over my ankle foot brace. I can't do my buttons in the morning, and I'm hurrying off and trying to get to work, and it's just frustrating. And so Tommy Hilfiger has really stepped up and done a nice adaptive clothing line. I've actually worked with one of the clients who is working with him. And they're really coming up with fashionable things that are really functional. Magnetic buttons, easy to pull over. So if you have anything like any type of a brace or anything that makes it harder to get on over the head. Additional buttons down the shoulders. It seems really simple, but anything like that that makes it easier to get your arms through. One-handed zippers, and then hems that open. Like you can see this patient in the bottom has an ankle foot orthosis on. And so that's really helpful for them. Jeans, number one request that I get from people asking for adaptive clothing. And one of the first things that I used to tell people, let's not worry about wearing jeans. If it's hard to get them up or pull them on, go to something softer, elastic waistband. Yes, that still makes it easier, but if you really want to be able just to wear your jeans and it's just that stiff button is too hard, this is a nice option. Another low-tech knockoff option is to take an elastic hairband, hook it onto the button, pull it through the loop, and hook it back onto the button. And then you instantly have elastic waist jeans. So you don't have to throw away your current jeans. You might be able to take an elastic hair tie to it and just make it a little bit easier to get on and off. Again, dresses that are adaptive that will be really nice too. Under Armour. So I'm in Baltimore, so obviously we hear a lot about Under Armour because they're located here. They were one of the first ones to come up with a really nice looking magnetic zipper. So they call it the Mag Zip. Again, some of this clothing is not cheap, but it's nice if you need one good coat, which we often all do. What happens is instead of having to thread the zipper through, if you line it up even close, the magnet clicks. And then you can just pull it up and put the key ring on there, and then you're so much easier to get in and out of your coat than having to waste all the time or asking somebody to zip up your coat, which sometimes people just don't want to do. There are different types of shoes that are adaptive. So Billy is one company. You can see that shoe on the top kind of looks a little crazy. The whole top of it zips off, but once it's zipped back on, you can't even really tell that it's an adaptive shoe. Nike has some nice ones too at the bottom there that zip down the back. Other things, elastic shoelaces, things like that you can put into your existing shoes, anything to make getting on and off a little bit easier. So having had 2 small kids and knowing what a pain in the butt it is to do baby clothing, baby zippers, baby buttons, onesies, just even getting them on the kids are tough, much less managing the fasteners. This was a great company that came up with a whole line of magnetic baby clothing, whether it's to make it easier for a grandparent to put the clothing on the baby or the parents. It just is one nice strategy that people are really looking at making these more universal. Talk a little bit about bathing. The Freedom one, this is an independent company that I met at the AOTA conference, the American OT conference, and they've really blown up since they've been able to be in with the OTs. This is a great wand because it is an all-in-one. You don't need a separate long-handled sponge and a long-handled shaver and a toilet aid. This is kind of nice because it does everything. There's a little button that opens up a little claw and it can grasp things and let you be able to use it in a variety of fashions. A wash mitt, basically a washcloth sewn on 2 sides with a little opening to be able to put some soap or body wash into, but then it attaches to the wrist so it doesn't fall off. You're not dropping your soap. Some of my clients in certain clinical trials have had PICC lines inserted, whether it's for medications, whether it's for any type of drug trials. And so then they're like, when can I shower? How can I shower? And so this is a great option. There's a waterproof PICC line protector. I'll tell you the low-tech option of this is taking saran wrap, wrapping it around and just taping it off with good medical tape. And then that's pretty much providing the same level of protection. Hair washing. For some clients who are in a wheelchair or just have difficulty either positioning their neck to be able to be in a sink or to be able to sit in the shower for that long to get their hair washed, these are just 2 nice options. One's a blow-up option and one's just an attachment that can lean them back up against the sink. Kind of like being at the salon, but you're not having to tilt your neck all the way back. Bidets, so for toileting, obviously that's something that's very personal, independent, not something you necessarily want somebody there to help you with. A lot of times there are washlets that can go onto your toilet, existing toilets. You don't necessarily have to replace the whole thing. Toto is a great company, but there's a lot of other companies coming right up on their heels that are coming out with a lot less expensive options too. If getting on and off the toilet is difficult because it feels like it's too low, which is often the case, even when you hear, oh, it's ADA compliant, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's at a level that's going to make it easy for the hip flexors or the extensors to be able to get you on and off the toilet. So this is one that you can rise. It looks like a potty chair, but you can take the bucket out of it and put it over your existing toilet. And then if you ever did need it in the bedroom or close by, you could put the bucket back in and then have a bedside commode. The one on the bottom left has a drop arm, which is kind of nice. If you just need to push and scoot over from sitting on a chair or sitting on the edge of the bed, you can do that. It's a little bit easier to get onto than having to stand up and get all the way around the armrest. The one on the right is a hydraulic lift, so it really does lift you almost all the way back up to standing. Again, not covered by insurance. Often, occasionally, you can get it in certain states. Shower seating, there's a variety of different shower chairs. There's reclining shower chairs, roll-in shower chairs. A tub transfer bench is really nice, the one on the right. If you don't have doors on your tub, you can do this and sit down on the outside, have somebody lift your legs in, and then suddenly you're inside the tub, so you're never having to stand on a slippery surface, which is really nice. Grooming, so sometimes things as simple as shaving and brushing your teeth, looking for an electric razor, an electric toothbrush, #1 easiest adaptation, and it's something a lot of us use anyway. A water pick is just another option to be able to get good oral hygiene, which is so important, and often one of the things we don't think about when the ADLs or the activities of daily living start to get harder to do and you just can't brush or clean as good as you used to, this might be a nice option. So sometimes it's about positioning. So some people might notice some increased tone or tightness in their hands or their feet, and you might hear someone recommend a splint. So there's a variety of different splints. I didn't put them all on here, but just to give a basic picture of some of them, there are resting hand splints to hold the hand out. Often these are recommended for just at nighttime or like an hour or two during the day. Kind of like your exercise is just wearing these. The boots that you'll see on the right, those are to keep the ankles at a good position so you don't get what they call drop foot or those plantar flexor contractures where the toes just drop all the way down and then your ankle gets really tight. A leg lifter is a nice thing if you have difficulty extending your leg and being able to get it up onto the couch or the bed. Sometimes laying in bed is difficult, finding the right position. I will tell you, I recommend this for a lot of my spine patients as well as for a lot of my neuromuscular patients. They'll complain of shoulder pain or back pain or hip pain, and they just can't get right in the right position. A pregnancy pillow or a Snuggle pillow is one of the brands. It's like a C-shaped pillow that comes right behind the C-spine, and it keeps the spine nice and elongated and keeps the hips in a nice position. You could also put a pillow between the feet with this. You can hug it from the back or from the front, and it keeps someone in a nice position. Some other adaptive equipment, there are knob extensions that can help being able to do the oven or the washing machine if twisting that is difficult. Going to larger pens might seem pretty basic, but it's really an easy adaptation. This also shows what's called a wrist cock-up splint, or people commonly know it as a carpal tunnel splint. Key turners, anything just to make the keys a little bit bigger to be able to hold on to so that you can turn them a little bit easier. I'll talk a little bit about adaptive driving. So occupational therapists are often, if you find a driving specialist, they can often be an occupational therapist that has additional certification in driving. The American Occupational Therapy Association has a national database for rehab drivers or driver rehab. And so what this is, if you need to find someone who could look at adaptations for driving, sometimes it's as simple as putting a spinner knob on the steering wheel to be able to turn so your arms aren't cranking hand over hand to be able to make a tight, quick turn. Sometimes it's going to hand controls because the feet are a little bit weaker. This is definitely an out-of-pocket expense. Insurance doesn't cover this. It's state-by-state requirements. In Maryland, we're a state of self-report, so if I discuss driving with someone, it's not something that I'm reporting, but I'm giving them the professional recommendation, and then they can find that information out on their own. Car transfer. Some people have difficulty getting in and out of the car. There are lifters, like you'll see up in the top middle. Sometimes a swivel seat on the chair on the bottom can be helpful because it'll turn your body. I had a patient who recommended one of the best things was a trash bag. Just made it easier to slide getting in and out of the car. The handy bar. I recommended this for my father. He had spine surgery. He had difficulty getting in and out of the car. He keeps it in the door pocket. And you can see this woman's got it put right in the door jamb so she can be able to push off of something to be able to get in and out of the car a lot easier than someone pulling up on her arms. I'm going to talk a little bit about assistive technology. I'm the director of our assistive technology clinic with a speech language pathologist who works with me. We look at options for communication, adaptation, computer access. It could be a variety of different things for technology. This was just a study that I published about the starting of our assistive technology clinic. And again, technology could be anything. It could be just making things easier at home. The nice thing is modern technology is really catching up to what we've been trying to do for years, and it's making it so much easier for the adaptive technology that we need to be able to provide. Some things are required for communication. So whether it's an eye gaze computer that you're using running completely with your eyes to be able to communicate, access your email, text, or if it's a head tracker, so you're being able to turn your head and that moves the mouse on your screen. There are some dictation software options. So Dragon has a good dictation option. So if you want to speak and have it type for you because typing is difficult, honestly, some of the new Microsoft and Google stuff is actually pretty competitive to what Dragon's been doing for years. And it's a little bit easier to access now because it's in most devices. Sometimes it might be that your voice is a little softer and you need to get your volume back up. And so a voice amplifier might be really helpful. Some simple low tech things for communication. The top left is called a boogie board. It's on Amazon. It's 20 bucks. It's like the old Etch-a-Sketch. You write on it, you push a button, it erases it. It's low tech so that if you use a pen and paper to write your notes on or to communicate, I would worry that if you ever lost it, maybe your personal information might get lost. If you lost this, nothing is saved. So it's just a nice option. On the top right, you're gonna see a magnifier for in your iPad to be able to amplify the sound. That's really nice. That was actually available on Shark Tank. And then on the middle, you'll see a pop socket. And this is something that people use, I joke, like my friends' kids who are making me feel very old, that to be able to hold on to it. But if your hand gets tired of holding onto your phone, it's just a nice option. There are some communication apps that if you type into them, they can speak for you. Speech Assistant AAC has become our #1 recommended app. It's free on Android products. It's about $14, I believe now, on Apple products. It's just a nice, if you have lost your ability to speak or you have dysarthria or slurred speech, it's nice to have something you can type into your smartphone or to your tablet and have it speak for you. If you don't like the voice that's coming out of it, sometimes there's a program called SVox that has some really different adaptive voices and good accents. I've had people say, I'd like to have a French accent, so we find that for them. So obviously financial considerations are something that's important to consider. When you're thinking about getting a wheelchair or something to that effect, you want to remember that wheelchairs are often only covered every 5 years, one time every 5 years. So if someone says, you go to the store and they say, oh, we can get you a wheelchair and it'll be covered by your insurance, but they're not a therapist and they're not looking at your diagnosis per se, and your needs may change. So if they say, we can get you a manual wheelchair, it's free, no worries, we'll bill your insurance, and that wheelchair really costs $20 or $200. If, say, in a year, your needs are becoming more significant and you might need a scooter or you might need a power wheelchair, you may have burned your insurance benefit if you use it on that lower end wheelchair. So just be aware of that and maybe talk with your therapist or your providers and just double check to make sure that you're not using your benefit whenever you might need to save it for something else. Communication devices as well are only covered one time every 5 years. So if I know someone has a progressive neuromuscular disease and they can type right now, but maybe in a couple of years, that might be a little bit difficult and they might want eye gaze, I'm not going to use their insurance benefit for one of the typing devices. Bathroom items such as shower chairs, commode risers, grab bars are often not covered. Again, it's state by state, and I can only speak for where I'm practicing in Maryland. But you want to check and see what is and is not covered before you go and think that you're going to put something in for reimbursement. And I would just say, if any of these things have piqued your interest, or you've said, there's something that I'm having a little bit of difficulty with, and I just kind of want to problem solve it. If you don't have a therapist at your local clinic, you could search at your local hospital to see if there's an outpatient therapist that might be able to help you, or a home therapist. I'm happy as well. If you have any questions, to email me. I can shoot you some responses or just some resources that way as well. And again, I left several pages of references. I'm a little bit of a nerd in that I just like to read these articles and then share what I've learned. And then this is my email, kshowal1@jhmi.edu. And no questions off limits. If I'm not aware of the answer, I will definitely do my best to find it. And with that, I think I'll see if there's any questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. That was that was a great actually presentation. A lot of things that are out there for people to use. We had someone type in, what about putting on socks? Is there any assistance to help putting those on?
So there is. What often I will run into, there are what's called a sock aid that's available. There are some that are terry cloth or covered in what's like a towel material. I would recommend that kind over some of the other harder plastic ones. So a terry cloth sock aid would be one of the things I would recommend. They have other things if there are TED hose or compression stockings or nylons that some women like to wear. That are a little bit more difficult to put on. There are some adaptive strategies for those. It's still tough because you have to be able to put it onto the device. So it depends how strong the hands are. If it's more of an issue of bending over, then yes, I think a sock aid would be very helpful.
Okay, and could you put up your email address again
Yes.
for us? And let me just, I'm going to copy that and I will type that in here too.
Hey, Showwall1. The 1 and the L seem to mess people up.
There you go. I just sent that to everyone. Okay, what about, do you have a suggestion for any slippery bathroom floors besides just the rug? Is there something that we could potentially lay down on the floor to make it less slippery, all encompassing?
So it's a give and take here. So what you give in slippery and grip, you make sure that doesn't then trip you up. So something like the system that's grippy is great, but then if you're not picking up your feet and placing them and you catch, it's going to throw you. There are different textures of tiles that people will do. I'll often recommend try to not get the polished or the finished tiles on the floors. It just makes it overly slippery, or any cleaning products that just might make it overly slippery. The towel, having down mats inside the shower, having down those, not necessarily the sticker or the suction cup mats, they tend to get folded up and slide down and slippery anyway. But there are like individual stickers that are like 5 inches by 5 inches that you can put down that feel kind of like the same texture that you'd have on stairs. Just a little bit of anti-grip there. Yeah, that's a great question.
Perfect. Okay. Could you also tell us what the name of the hair washing ramp item was again?
Oh, yes. Hold on. Let me see. I can find it right here. It's called the let me see. That was the Easy Shampoo Easy Access.
Say that again.
Easy Shampoo Easy Access.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And could you possibly give a suggestion for people that are living in the country that don't have access to things in nearby bigger towns or cities? Is there a website that you could recommend for adaptive products?
So it used to be Salmon's Preston, and now it's Performance Health. North Coast is another company. Again, I have no disclosures to any of these companies. They're just often my go-tos. I would recommend taking the name of the product if you think you know what the product is. And honestly, Amazon's become amazing and quick and easy, that you can type in the name of the product and often see some of them there.
Okay, perfect. Could you recommend a brand of night splint in lieu of an Ultraflex AFO? I know those are adjustable, but we have a hard time getting these paid for.
Yeah, the multi-POTUS boot, that blue boot, it can come in many different names. Um, that's one that we often get covered. Again, that's locally here in Baltimore that we've had it been able to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice kickstand on the back, which I like, so that if you're in the boot and your foot flops out to the side, it doesn't tweak your hip and your knee.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my go-to. The soft offloading boot was kind of the pillowy looking one. It isn't as rigid, but it's actually I've been told it's much more comfortable. And it also has like a triangle Velcroed on kickstand as well. So if the hip won't rotate as much as well. So either the multi-POTUS boot or the soft offloading boot would be where I would go.
Okay. Let me see. We've got one here that is talking about a chairlift. Where would a furniture store sell a chairlift? What can you kind of walk us through the process of how you go about getting a chairlift?
Yeah, and again, this is one of those things that I have not seen to be covered here locally. I don't know what the experiences have been out there. But a chairlift is essentially a recliner chair that it will actually lift someone up to standing often, a button or having some type of hydraulics to it. The tough part with those, you have to have enough hip strength. So I've had some clients who've gotten so much weaker in their legs that if it just tips you forward, it's just going to kind of tip you down onto the floor.
Okay.
Times though, it's a nice it's an in between to be able to get up from the chairs. Furniture stores might have them. Medical supply stores are definitely going to have them. And that's going to be probably where I would say to start, is look at the medical supply stores, at least to see or to sit in them and see if it's going to fit you. Like any recliner chair, I'm 5'1" on a good day. Have to make sure that it fits your body anyway. So sitting in them, trying them out and seeing if it can stand you up to where you want it to would be where I would go.
All right. That's very good advice. And just so people are aware, we did record this presentation and it will be on mda.org in a few weeks for review. So we do have copies of these resources that Kelly has shared. Could you recommend a raised or hydraulic toilet seat to use with a bidet?
That's a good question. Not off the top of my head, but I can research that.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
And Dr. Disted just typed in, she has a patient with a hydraulic chairlift cushion type device.
Yeah, so there are also chair lifts that are there are seat lifts, which is I think what she's talking about. And that's the cushion that can sit on any chair and it pop you up. It's way cheaper than the recliner lift chairs. And it's portable and you can take it anywhere. You can sit it on your dining room chair. You can sit it on your own recliner at home. Yeah, that's a great recommendation.
Perfect. I am not seeing any more questions. If anyone has any more questions, put them in now. Not seeing anything come through. Thank you very much, Kelly. That was very informative and just a lot of ideas for everybody out there. I think we've come a long way in adaptive equipment. So thank you very much for your expertise and your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.